Throughout legends and throughout every country, there's always been stories and historical facts of giants living on the earth and retreating into the next level under the earth in big caverns and caves where they can fit. Now, giants were of all various sizes, and in the olden days, some people, the common people, were very, very simple, and for that reason, people were confused about what the giants were, and simply, the giants were just big people. They were not gods. However, people call them many things, and if you look at this picture now, that's a picture of a tree that was cut down, and this is a picture of some Stonehenge, which only giants did actually make. In the northern countries, you must remember, people used to believe that the earth was flat, for good reason. With mathematics and science and reason and rationale, they believed that the earth was flat, and plus they'd travel around. So the Norse people had giants in Iceland and the northern countries. Before Svalbard existed, there was giant people, Norse people. Not gods, just big people. And these giants were famous as called the Ice Giants. And at the very North Pole, there is an opening. If the world is flat, at the very North Pole, there is like a sinkhole, a giant one, where lights come out of it. And this light that comes out of the hole of the North Pole is the Aurora Borealis, of green lights in the sky, which comes out from the hole. And if you go down that hole, if you were a giant, or if you had a rope, or if you went into the next level of Earth, down that North Pole hole, you would come to a place called Asgard. And there is a story, a historical account of the people who lived in Greenland just one day upped all of them, pretty much all of them, in boats, and they just disappeared, almost like thousands of people. Where did they go in one day? It's a historical account. But where did he go? Well, I'll tell you, they went down that hole, the hole in the North Pole, which leads you to another world under our Earth. And one of its entrances is the North Pole itself. It's a hole. Because when the tide goes out, that's when water comes out. But where does the tide go when the tide comes in? You must remember, if all the seas of the earth, the water is coming in with the tide, that means the water is going into the hole in the North Pole. And when the seas come out, and it's high tide in every country at the same time, that must mean that the water is coming out. So the water goes in and out from the sinkhole in the North Pole. And that's the story of the Norse giants, where they went and what they did. There's another historical account of Polyphemus, which was a cyclops that used to live, according to Homer, the Greek, on the island called Sicily. And there was a famous man, historical figure called Odysseus, and him and his men went to this Sicily island with giants living on it, and they came across this one-eyed giant cyclops, and he captured them and he put them in his cave, and they tried to escape. So they came up with a plan. Odysseus and his men came up with a plan to spear the cyclops giant through his one eye, which they did, which was really bad, but they had to escape. And then they hid silently, and he had many big sheep, quite big sheep in his cave, the giant, the cyclops. So in the morning, some other giants heard him screaming and asking for help, and they said, what is it? Who's attacking you? Who's attacking you? Because he was in the cave and there was a massive boulder that the men couldn't move. Only the giant Cyclops could move this massive boulder. And all of Odysseus' men couldn't move it. So Odysseus had told the giant Cyclops that his name wasn't Odysseus, his name was no one. So the giant Cyclops said, when his friends came to them and said in the morning, who's attacking you, who's attacking you? He said, no one's attacking me, no one's attacking me. You get it? So anyway, they hid under these giant sheep, and then he rolled away the giant boulder. And then when he took out the sheep out to graze, when the Cyclops took the sheep out to graze, Odysseus and his men were hid under the sheep. And that's another true story. Another true thing, which is definitely true, is these Oni in Japan. I'm sure you've seen some Japanese giants. Typically 14, 15 foot tall, which is not very tall for a giant, but these Japanese giants are still alive. They live in some of the islands in Japan, away from Tokyo, and they're still alive, and they're usually called Oni, which is Japanese giants, and they've usually got big trapezium muscles, and they look like massive sumos, but 15 foot tall, and usually they live on islands or underground in big caves, because the Earth is a cave system. If you study the cave Earth and the flat Earth, it's a system of caves big enough for basically another world under ours. The world is in levels. We have different levels of the Earth. We're on one level, then under us there's another sky and trees and things, and another level. And if you look at if you study the flat Earth map, there is another light that lights up their world, and it's a green light. Now you can see the green light coming out from the hole in the North Pole, and that's what we call the Aurora Borealis. So these Japanese ones are real, you can see them. And then there's there's a famous story recently, I think it was a few years ago, that some giants that live under the caves in the Solomon Islands, basically this person had a car, and his car was stuck on the road, and there was a landslide in the Solomon Islands a few years ago, and some massive bricks and stuff and boulders had fallen down, blocking the roads. And then in the morning, all the boulders were mysteriously moved away, the cars were moved away. That's because the locals said that giants live, friendly giants, you must remember these are friendly ones, friendly giants live under the caves in the Solomon Islands, and they came out at night to move the car and to clear the roads and just to move the boulders. So, in the Bible, in Ezekiel 38:2, it mentions Gog and Magog. Now that's in the Bible, but in the Quran, these people are called Yajooj and Majooj in Arabic, but in English, in the Bible, Ezekiel 38:2, they're called Gog and Magog. Now, famous people, such as the Welshman, the Honourable Blessed Geoffrey of Monmouth, in circa 1136, wrote in his History Regnum Britannia, he wrote that they were 12 cubits tall and living in Britain, which they were. Many people, thousands of people testified to this. And 12 cubits tall, because in them days there was cubits, so 12 cubits tall equates to 18 feet tall. If anyone tells you that they've sent someone, if anyone tells you that they're 12 feet tall, that's not true. They're 12 cubits tall, not feet. They're 12 cubits tall, which is 18 feet tall. So Gog and Magog from the Bible, and which is Yajooj and Majooj in the Quran, they're 18 feet tall. Now, where are you going to keep all these people? Well, the truth is, the Earth is not really a pyramid shape, but basically, we've got sky, and then we've got land, but underneath us, underneath our bedrock and caves, If you go under the pyramids of Giza, you'll see there's a passageway and that takes you directly under the pyramid of Giza. There is a passageway under that pyramid which takes you down, 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 and it takes you down to another earth with sky and trees, and it's massive. It's a big earth, big enough to house millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people. And, you know, it's a big earth because the earth is on levels, you see. There's levels of the earth. That's why if you read the Bible or the Quran, there's many worlds, several worlds, because the earth is on levels, you see. So, but people, some of the people worship the giants. If you look at the hieroglyphs in the Egypt, you can see there was 15 and 20 foot tall people in the hieroglyphs. You can see that there's many people about 6 foot tall in the hieroglyphs in Egypt, on the architecture, on the monoliths. And then you can see next to 16 foot tall people, there's people that basically come up to other people's shins. There's people who only come up to other people's shins. Now, it was common in the olden days for giants and normal sized people to live together. Often, that's how all the big monoliths were made. So they did an experiment. They took the world's strongest crane that we have nowadays, the biggest metal cranes made out of iron and metal that we have nowadays, even the biggest cranes that make our skyscrapers nowadays, they can only lift a certain amount of weight. Now you must remember an average car is 2 tons of metal, but you must remember, if you think about it, most of the car, where you sit in the car and the passengers sit in the car, is just empty space. Now imagine getting a car, then where all the people sit and the driver sits and the passengers sit, imagine filling that in with concrete, how heavy that car would be. Right? I'm just giving you an idea of how heavy a stone would be of that size. Now if you look at the little stones of, well they're not little, but if you look at the monolithic stones of Britain, where Juj, Majooj, Gog, Magog come from Britain, like Stonehenge, you look at them stones, even one of those stones, if you got all the so-called world's strongest men, like Eddie Hall and Bill Kazmai and John Paul Sigmarsson and so on and so forth, and I do believe John Paul Sigmarsson is the best one, but if you were to just get them around just one of these stones at Stonehenge and ask them to lift it, if every world's strongest man was to stand round one of the stones at Stonehenge, and if they all to lift at the same time, to lift the same stone, they would not budge it. They would not lift it, nor would they push it. So, you would actually need a giant to lift them stones. And if you go around to other places in the world, there are bigger stones that are even more rectangular, which are much, 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 much bigger than the Stonehenge stones. There's some stones which are 300 tons. Now, I've gone round and asked some people, and they said, you know what, even the biggest cranes that we have today that are made from iron and steel cranes that we have today, even the biggest ones that make our skyscrapers, they can't lift them stones. They can't lift one of those stones. So whatever has lifted or made them stones was strong. Not strong like an elephant, not strong like a person, not strong like a killer whale that can jump clean out of the water. No, we're talking something much, 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 much stronger. Much stronger. Stronger than steel. Stronger than our strongest cranes that we have that build skyscrapers. If you look at the skyscrapers that we have, and skyscrapers are a sign as well. If you look at the steel, the biggest steel, industrial steel cranes that we have that lift tons of weight, well, they can't lift some of the heaviest rectangular shaped stones that we find as monoliths all over the earth. So something has lived to lift them up in the past, thousands of years ago and hundreds of years ago, and that is actually factually giants. Now, if anyone's ever seen knows anything about the Illuminati and secret societies, well, they wanted to hide God, pretend God didn't exist, so they invented a school system to lie to you with geography, history and science, and teach you things that are not exactly true for a laugh, but, you know, for a reason as well, just to hide basic facts from people, to keep people as workers, to keep them in check as slaves, or just as minimum wage paid slaves. So, now according to the Bible, these Gog and Magog, they were the evil giants, and in the Quran they're also called Yajooj and Majooj in Arabic, and there was a legend, and it was written in some historical books which have now been removed, but you can still find these historical books, they're still there, old ones, like hundreds of years old historical books, telling you where they went and what happened. And you can see that if you research these books, they were saying that there was a man called Alexander, and he conquered more countries than you know. Oops. He conquered... Yeah, it wasn't Christopher Columbus that conquered America. No. There was a guy... There was many people that found America and Australia and Antarctica and other things, and things beyond the Antarctica and the ice wall. They found these countries before Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus was just like a Freemason lie. He was conquered by Alexander the Great before that, and there was a man in Arabic called Zulkarnain. In English, many people say Alexander the Great. Well, yes. There was a man who went round the earth saying there's only one God above us, don't worship anything else. And he conquered many giants and many countries and many things. He conquered basically every country. You call him in the Quran Zulkarnain, or in English, Alexander the Great. You know, people said many things about him, but he was not gay. They lied. He's not gay. He was never gay. So... So yeah, the giants all over the country and all over the world where they lived, they left massive stones and houses and things, skeletons and so on, architecture, and even some axes. So some axes, as big as a car, an axe. Imagine swinging that around. That's what they found. So basically these giants are real, they are real, but the bad ones are Yajooj and Majooj. Now, in the Islamic story, Jesus Christ, which is... a prophet, servant of God, he's going to come down and rule the earth. Wait a minute. There's a church in Britain with statues of Gog and Magog, which is Yajooj and Majooj, and there's a story in there as well in the church. It's all carved in stone. There's a story of there's these giants, and every November these giants, or replicas of these giants, are paraded around in the Mayor of London festival. So these British giants statues in London were actually the real people that they're based upon, Gog and Magog, 18 foot tall. Now, they were captured in a war, because these giants fought Brutus in a war, historical war. It's well recorded by factual history, not what you get in schools, but factual history. Brutus fought these giants and he won, and he captured 2 of them, and he actually, with many thousands of people witnessing this as witnesses, they actually were forced, these giants, 18 foot tall each, they were forced to work as porters in the royal palace. And their statues are now found in Guildhall. So in the book Legends of Alexander, in 1590, Spencer's Fairy Queen book, these are well noted as proof as historical things. But even in India, even in Hindu history, there was a man called Ravana, and he needed this giant called it, and the giant used to sleep for 6 months at a time, apparently, and this giant was called Karna, I think I'm saying it right, and this giant was so big that he needed 1,000 elephants to trample over him just to wake him up. You know, these were big. These are giants so big they could pick an elephant up with one hand. That's how big we're talking. Some of the giants got. So, but you must remember, there's another giant as well in the Bible as well, not that big a giant, but yeah, I don't know how tall this one was, because people like to play him down on size. You know, atheists and that, and scientists, atheists, they like to pretend they weren't that tall. But the obvious one from the Bible is David and Goliath. David was a prophet. Prophet meaning someone who only worships the one God above, without an image. You know? That's what prophet is. The prophet tells the people there's only one God above to be worshipped. And Goliath was a person who did not accept the message of the prophets. He says, there's not one God, I'm not going to worship this thing above us. Who can be bigger than me? Why should I worship this one God above me when I'm a giant and I'm so big? Anyway, David had a fight with him, and he got this stone and spun it around with this thing, and he hit Goliath on the head and killed him. But you must remember, everyone wants to be a giant. Everyone says, I wish I was taller, bigger, stronger, more muscular. But at the end of the day, they're not that strong. Giants are physically the strongest creatures that exist. But they're a lot stronger than elephants and other little weak animals. However, because it is reported in British history that Gog and Magog did rip oak trees, British oak trees, out of the ground with their hands and throw them and use them as weapons. You know, there's many antiquities you can find around the world. If you go to some Muslim countries, they're not governed by the Smithsonian Institute. Therefore, they're allowed to show skeletons of 40-foot tall men in the Muslim museums in certain Muslim countries. But you must remember, if you've ever watched the Indiana Jones movie, I don't know if it's The Last Crusade or which one it is. Anyway, at the end of the movie, it shows you this big warehouse, and that's a real warehouse, where anything like the Ark of the Covenant or anything that is like the parts of the true cross or whatever, if you believe in the cross and that, and giant fossils and that's where they keep them. The real artifacts, that's where they keep them. And if anyone ever finds a giant skull, say a skull as big as a car, or a skull as big as, I don't know, a 6-foot tall skull, or a 40 or 20-foot tall skeleton of a man, if they find it, and which are often found actually, if you do digging works, if you're a builder and you dig up the roads, giant skeletons of humans are often found, but you never find skeletons of dinosaurs. So maybe dinosaurs are a lie, and in reality it's a cover-up to hide the fact that giants are and were alive, and still are alive, but they live underground. If you study that much. But if you believe in the school system, that's just closed-minded. That's just, school is the school system. In some democracy countries, the school system was actually made by the school system where you send children to school and teach them one way of thinking, one way of geography, one way of science, one way of a uniformed way of so-called facts. That system of school system was made by the Freemasons and by the Illuminati to trick people into believing stuff that is just non-factual. Yeah, so someone just interrupted me and I've just deleted something. I can't remember what I was going to say, but anyway, there was this in the Bible, there's Gog, Magog, and in the Quran that is Yajooj and Majooj, and according to these historical books of accurate history that's from the 13th, from different centuries in 1590, from Legends of Alexander by Spencer's Fairy Queen in 1590, it mentions these giants and Alexander the Great going around and conquering them and conquering the small and big people. Alexander the Great went around. He wasn't gay, that's a lie. He in the Quran, there's a man called Zulkarnain. He went round, and before Christopher Columbus didn't conquer America, didn't find it. No, that's just a lie of the Freemasons and a lie of the people. Not Freemasons in particular, really, but a lie of the Illuminati. Let's say Illuminati. Just a lie of secret societies who want to lie to you and teach you fake history by sending you to school, teaching you fake science by sending you to school, teaching you fake things by sending you to school. I'm not saying don't go to school. I'm just saying if you go to school and you're a child, you wouldn't know anything different, would you? Because you're a child, what do you know? So if you've been taught one thing all your life from school, you must remember school is a Illuminati system in order to teach you falsehood. Well, there's nothing wrong with it, but just know that's what it is. Now, in the Quran, in Islam, there's a story that Jesus Christ is going to come back and he's a prophet, servant of God, because all the prophets said only worship the one God without an image that's above us. But some people said, nah, we want to worship other things, and we don't believe in one God. We can't have that. We just don't want it. So anyway, Jesus Christ is going to come back according to the Islamic story, and then these giants, Yajooj or Majooj, are going to come out near the end of time, and that's the story of the giants. We'll tell some more stories about this in other episodes. Please subscribe, and plenty of information that you will probably like to know.